Hello, hello. We're back this week, and today's topic is about trust. We find that as financial advisors, this is core to the work that we do, is building trust with our clients. And so for our listeners, they might work in a similar industry or many industries who rely on building trust. We realize that every relationship is different. People are not formulas. But there are some guiding principles and strategic ways for helping to build trust with your clients. So today we're going to share some stories, and we're going to talk mainly from our experience about more effective ways to build trust. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. Jeremiah or Randy, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I think I have the more length in as far as the business, going back nearly 40 years. And I look at what we do now as compared to what I did 40 years ago. The trust level shouldn't have changed, but the service or the product or what we provide to our clients has changed over the 40 years. The advent of being a certified financial planner, I've seen that from the start of infancy back in the 70s to where it is right now, which is a much different level of professionality. But at the core of it, you want to be able to listen to your client. Truth and trust. I always come back to the two C's, character and capability. Do you have the character to do the right thing, but also do you have the capability to implement for that client what is necessary for them to achieve their financial goals? And what I really like about where we're at right now is that we have a higher level, a completely different level as far as outcome as fiduciaries. And that is something that was not always the case. We had what we call transaction, and so where you received a commission on products that you sold. And I always felt that there was a gap when I did that. But that was what the market was about that point. Because I can remember the advent being a fee-only planner. It was really a standout. In other words, it was a surprise to everybody. Said, how do you make a living? How do you manage the relationship going forward? And I had to say it was a major shift in how you looked at the business that you did. And I'm so glad that we are where we're at right now. Yeah. So when a client comes in right now, I don't consider them a target. Like, when you walk on a used car lot, right? Don't you feel like you're a target?
Right. You're a moving target.
And people will zero in on you. You got eyes on you. Like, are they going to buy? Who's going to take that? Who's going to go talk to that person? And right now, when somebody comes to us, they're never a target. First thing that we do is listen, right? And going back to your comments, Laura, at the very beginning, everybody's different. Everybody comes from different backgrounds, different circumstances, where they're at. If we're talking to somebody who's 40 years old or somebody who is 80 years old, there's different aspects for that. And our job is to be able to sort out the information that they're giving us, ask the proper questions, gather it in, and then come back with an advisory structure that's going to be best for them.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's a great even perspective of how we service people now. Like you said, it's not sales role, it's a fiduciary role. I even have a slightly different perspective coming out of the legal industry. I had to track every hour, every minute. We were billing people for everything we did. And so, whatever was needed, we were billing. We're always constantly billing. And it's been really nice, this transition here, to say we're here to care for clients. And if that means one meeting, if that means 12 meetings, if that means, we're supporting their entire household, and our compensation is through the assets under management. But it's nice not having to track the piecemeal to be able to create a bill to say, this is what we did for you. I really appreciate that.
Because some people come to us and they have never had a relationship with a financial advisor, so they really don't know what to expect. They don't even know. We recorded another episode on what happens after you say hello, right? What are the questions you ask? How are you supposed to identify whether or not this relationship is going to serve you best? But beyond that, we also have some clients that have an existing or past relationship with an advisor. I'll bring up one recent example. We're actually in the process of onboarding this client, but in the first phone call, they were very open with us and shared that they had a negative experience with their current financial advisor. They met, they shook hands, they had, some beginning of a relationship. They transferred their assets over to that financial advisor for their management. And then guess what? Never heard from him.
Yeah.
only when they were being proactive, only when they were reaching out to say, hey, we have a couple questions. Can we meet with you? And so we have kind of a set sort of schedule where we're going to meet with our clients on a routine basis if nothing else happens in between. But they need to know that they always have access to us for questions. And furthermore, if there's follow-up after a meeting, that we're being proactive about continuing that conversation, because every instance that we have to meet with our clients is a moment to build trust, right? We're either putting a deposit or we're taking a withdrawal. And so, right, like that's the goal. Every time, even if it's small, we get a chance to put in another little deposit.
Yeah.
And what I like about where we're at right now is that we have staffing to support. So when we sit down and talk with a client, whether it's at the very initial stages or after the prospect has become a client, and maybe it's years later, we have staff to support what we do. So when we sit down and talk with the client, we can focus on that client. We are not thinking about other things. We have the staffing that gives us the support level. So again, it's very much like going into a doctor's office. I love going into a doctor's office where the staffing, whether it be the nurse and or the front office, is giving the support information to the doctor when they come into the room. They're not starting from scratch from zero. They have a history already in front of them, and they know why you're there, and they know what you're going forward. And I think it's so important to build a relationship. I think back for a client that I had for, oh my goodness, 30 years, and you literally walk through the seasons with them. And it's not just investing, but it's also, it's something that is part of our practice is when a spouse passes away or a spouse gets sick. We've got several right now that we're working with on that level. And going back to your comment, Jeremiah, we're not charging extra for that. You know, in the legal practice, it was by the hour, right? You were clocking off your time. Here, we work what we're doing best for that client. That client can walk in and know that they're going to have an outcome that isn't all of a sudden they're going to get another bill at the end of the day, because we are engaged with that client in the circumstances they're at right now. And that to me is so critically important, that we have a landing space that they can come to us and they know that they can be vulnerable, and we're not going to take advantage of that vulnerability. We're going to do what we can, what is best for them. And the outcome, I mean, you're taking people through the highs and the lows, and you're walking through them at that point in time. But we have prime examples. For example, we just had a client where suddenly the husband died. Didn't expect it at all. He wasn't ill. There was no expectation that his life would be ending.
In fact, he was very healthy.
He was very healthy. And we had a phone call from the widow, and it was one of those phone calls. As soon as she started to speak, I went, okay, there's something going on here. It's not a normal phone call. And then she went on to tell me what had happened literally the night before. And of course, my heart just sank. These are clients that we've had for a long, long time, not expecting. There was transition going on in their lives. We were excited about what they were talking about.
In fact, you had just had dinner with them, I think, the week before. Like, you just had some really neat time, personal time with them.
It literally was days before, and it was serendipitous because it wasn't expected. We went to the same restaurant, and they were there, we were there, and we ended up having dinner with them. And it was, of course, no expectation that within literally days later that he was going to be gone. Yeah. And what makes that interesting is that we were in the midst of a very complex, he was just recently retired. We were bringing things together. He had business relationships. We had met with partners. Jeremiah, you spent, hours with helping with final transactions over the course of the previous year or so. And then all of a sudden, boom. And she looked at us like, what do I do now? Yeah. And
I think that's
really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's where that trust comes into play of, we've had that trust with that client for years. And now that he passed away, they were in the midst of moving homes. And so, she was going to sell her home and buy a new home. Well, previously in their life, he had been the one to walk through those transactions. Right. He had been kind of the lead, and we had supported him in that, but he had been the lead in that. Well, now she was left on her own to have to walk through this transaction. I think it was a beautiful moment for our staff to kind of rally around to say, hey, this is someone who we're going to guide through. And, most clients, we don't have to interact with the escrow agent, interact with the bank. Like we don't need to do that level, but we do if it is appropriate. Well, in her instance, we stepped right in, had a number of phone calls with the agent, with the escrow officer, working through that whole process for her. And it's a level of trust that I think is really beautiful to get to come in to someone's life in that moment. That's where the rubber hits the road, right? It's not, I'm busy. It's not, I have other things to do. It's this is her moment where she really needs us to show up. And our team, I was proud of our team. Our team showed up in a big way and got the move completed.
And I think it was an opportunity to honor not just our relationship with her, the wife, but to honor the relationship that you had with her husband.
For sure.
Because for years you said, we're taking care of you financially, right? We're providing financial health. We will continue to oversee this for you. We're helping steward this for what you need and for your future. And, you were really being an extension of that respect and honor that you held with him, extending that to her during that moment. And, someone else on our staff, I think, was kind of surprised that we were sort of in the top, let's say 5 phone calls that she made after her husband passed away. But just the immediacy of like, hey, let us know what happened. What do you need? A lot of times when we've been able to work with a client, there's nothing really urgent. And a lot of it is just giving them that relief that there's nothing urgent that needs to happen. Everything's, going to be okay. And let us know what you need, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Advent. I mean, we do all this planning, we do this preparation, and it's for those Advents. And not all those Advents are pleasant. It's not getting married. It's not taking a vacation always. It's not walking into retirement. There are other Advents, and getting sick, dying, all these, losing a job. These are Advents that are negative, not positive. But we want to be part of your life. We want to be part of our client's life so we can help them walk through that. Because there's decisions they're going to have to make, and hopefully through the process of what we've worked with them, that this is not going to be something that's going to upset their life to the point where it's going to be tragic. Yeah. And again, losing somebody, dying or having a health issue, yeah, that's hard. That's hard. But the remainder, the person that remains, is so critically that they have somebody that they can turn to, say, what do I do here? What do I do? What's about this? Who do I contact here? And we kind of step in front of them, and we help them through that process, right? I mean, that's rewarding for what we do.
And this trust building, I think this goes to a lot of different industries. We had a interesting story. We have 2 dogs, and one of them was being groomed. And as part of the grooming process, they're trimming this, they're cutting that. Well, apparently the dog probably licked it, but got her tongue nicked. So not that big of a deal. I'm sure that stuff happens, but it started bleeding, and it kept bleeding. And so the groomer called and said we can't really get it to stop bleeding. And so, we're going to need to come get the dog. Well, it was almost 5 p.m. I don't know if it was a weekday or
on a weekend. It was a Saturday.
So we're trying to call vets. They're all closed. We have a dog whose tongue just keeps bleeding. And so we're like, oh no, what are we going to do? And the kind of initial frustration of, the vet didn't call us till right at the end, or the groomer didn't call us till right at the end of the day. We weren't sure. But then the pivot was then the owner of the grooming salon said, I see what's happening here. There's a vet that's over by a different location we have. If you let us, we'll take the dog, take it to the vet, get that dealt with. And then we say, well, do we come pick up the dog? And he's like, well, we'll just bring him back to your house because we have to drive by that way. Anyways, they took the dog for the next hour and got the dog
or more.
The vet, paid for all that, brought the dog to our door, delivered the dog, and came out. And it was a moment, I think, for us where it went from that trust level of a little frustration, a little, there's a little broken trust. I just want to get the dog back, to all of a sudden now, man, they took care of the whole thing. And so Laura and I joked afterwards, like, wow, okay, that's a groomer for life. We'll always go there.
It was a 180. I walked into the groomer after they called me and told me about this scenario, and I was ready to give some constructive feedback. Why had Mr. contacted me an hour earlier, because there is a vet right around the corner, but they happened to close right at the time that you called me. It was a total 180. It went from being like, this was the last time that we'll do business here, to now I will only get my dogs groomed here.
Forever, right?
Yeah.
Right. And those trust moments are in the big
Pause
moments.
on Maine, by the way, people you're in the Southern California area. Pause on Maine. 3 locations.
Good.
Oh yeah.
Good recommendation.
That's right. So I think the trust is built in those big moments, right? But they're also in the little moments. Do they follow through on the promises? Were they there when you had the appointment time? Did they call you to confirm that you're going to be there? Do they listen
Right.
when you're talking to them? All those little cues that aren't that big of a deal. But we recently had an appointment I showed up to yesterday, and the person couldn't make it. Not a big deal, but the communication that they had sent our direction had missed. It wasn't a client, but it was just a slight miss, and so we had to kind of rally and, okay, how do we do this differently? And it's not that it's a horrible thing. It's just there's a little bit of trust that just cracked. A little bit of trust that cracked.
And if I can put a finer point on that, the vendor that we had booked an appointment with, everybody has multiple forms of communication: text, email, call. On this case scenario was an Instagram message that this vendor had sent me at 8 a.m. They were not feeling well, totally legitimate reason to cancel the appointment. This happened to be the second time though that they've canceled the appointment. And I had an extremely busy day. And it's not like I had time to go check social media. So there's something there about building trust. When you put out a message, oftentimes people feel like they've done their part. That was my responsibility. I communicated with you. But how were you? Did you know that they received the message that you gave them? And furthermore, how did they respond? Did that message land effectively? Did I communicate effectively? And sometimes that takes multiple times trying to say the same thing, right?
It comes down to accountability, and not only on our side, but also on the people that we're working with. We try to have structure, but also when we set an appointment in our office, it brings into the gears start turning, right? There's multiple people that are involved with the process of that appointment, and if the appointment doesn't happen, okay, you've wasted not just the advisor's time, but you've wasted all these other people's times. And there are circumstances where you can give grace. Obviously health, traffic. There's multiple reasons for saying yes. But Jeremiah and I were talking about one particular client here not too long ago, and he's had like multiple appointments. And it's like, okay, do we continue to work? We can't treat our clients that way, but we don't want to be treated like that either, right? The door swings both ways. So it's the level of importance that we put towards meeting with the client, preparing for the client, helping the client. We would like to see that as a mutual respect. So anyway.
No, that's good. Yeah, I think the other one that I always like is follow through. And Laura, you mentioned this a little bit, but I think you're really good at this innately. Is like we'll finish a meeting and you'll say, I'm going to send you an email with all the bullet points we just talked about as a nice summary and any action items. And I think it makes you having so many clients when you say that, they're like, oh, I just got to sit back like, oh, I don't have to like write down a couple of notes and remember this and all the other things that are going on. You're going to send it to me. I'm going to have it. Now, if you, in that moment, it feels good, right? And if you send the email, wow, that's a promise that has come through. It builds on that trust, right? If you forget to send an email or you don't, you decide not to, wow, that trust is going to fall off. Say, hey, I didn't take notes. I was relying on that email. I think you're so good at being consistent with that. But I think it's such a useful item that you're not, that whole responsibility. You're not just saying, hey, there's future action items. You got to do some, I got to do some. We all know. Well, good luck. But really bring that clarity to say, this is what you're doing as a client. This is what I'm doing as an advisor. This is when we're next going to connect. I think it makes it really easy for folks. And that level of trust, I think it builds every time. Like you said, every interaction is either a deduction or an addition. I think you're constantly adding.
Thank you. It's just another opportunity for feedback to make sure that what was communicated during the meeting was actually successfully communicated. So I like to send those follow-up emails or communication because it's also my checklist, right? I'm verifying this is what I heard were the important topics and the action items during the meeting. But I request, let me know if I missed anything or if there was something that you heard or you have any confusion, let me know. So it's a natural way to make sure. Because the worst case scenario is you commit to doing something during the meeting and then nothing happens. Right. Furthermore, there's a follow-up email. But when I send the follow-up email, it gives me an opportunity that if there was a gap, something that I didn't write down or I didn't capture during the meeting, they have an opportunity to bring my attention to it. Oh yeah, this was really important to us. Or you mentioned sending me that link to that podcast episode. Can you do that? Right. Sometimes it's really little. But thank you for saying that. I think it's kind of my checklist.
Those little things add up. We had a client that called in and said, I called in, nobody called me back. And I got that from the person in our office that schedules the appointment. And I said, did you talk to the person? And she says, no, I don't remember. There was no note taken or whatever. And to me, that drives me crazy because I hate phone trees. I hate getting into a system where you have no human contact Our office is set up to have somebody at the end of that phone that will take your message, will try to connect you to the person that you need to be connected to, and not be dropped off into some voicemail. So I called the client back. I said, confirmed what was going on, but I said, I understand that you called in and nobody called you back. And I said, that to me is just wrong. I want to make sure that we did the right thing. And he said, oh, it wasn't me. It was my sister. Oh, so then I went back to our scheduler and I said, get a hold of the sister, make sure that you confirm that she called, and was it something that was it given off to somebody? To me, it's just courtesy. It's just making sure that they know that we're listening to what their needs are. And it can be a minor thing, but that, like going back to what you said, Laura, it makes sure that everything is built on that going forward. And that kind of thing, it just doesn't happen in our office. It just doesn't happen. Now, we're not perfect. We don't walk on water here, but there's some things happen. But when things like that happen, I want to know. I want to know what's going on so that we have that communication and that assurance that when you call in or when you become a client, you are important to us. You're not just another check in the box, right?
Yep. And I love that. That's a great way to end this and just wrap this up. There's a lot of different ways to build trust, but for those who are in the business of building trust, or for those who are looking to build a trustful relationship with their financial advisor,
I like that.
A relationship built on trust with their financial advisor, come talk to us. We'd love to meet you.
Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.